morning. I know the governor continues to have his press conference here. I want to just set the stage for all of us here. We have over 200, almost 200 people logged in, eagerly wanting to hear you. Thanks for taking the time so quickly to want to speak directly to the business community, sir. And may we offer our support for what is will truly prove to be one of the darkest weeks in Minnesota's history. So thank you, and I really want to turn the floor over to you. I'll remove my video, but know that I'll be here in case you need anything. Thank you, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate all of you for tuning in. I reached out to B. Kyle this morning, reached out to Joe Spencer this morning, wanted to just get an opportunity to engage with you and to just share with you from my perspective where we are. It means a lot that so many of you logged in, so many of you tuned in to have this conversation. I'm happy to take questions with the caveat that the ground truth is evolving very rapidly right now. And there frankly may be questions that I don't know the answer to, but I'll get you as many answers as we can. Obviously this week we all woke up on Tuesday to for me, one of the most vile and disturbing images I've ever seen in my life. That video of George Floyd being killed by a Minneapolis police officer in such calm / dramatic fashion. With 3 other officers either holding him down or sort of standing guard with indifference. That is a video that every business leader, every CEO, every police officer, every neighborhood activist, every person, every human being that I've talked to who has seen it has just despised and can look at and say, this is absolutely not the kind of community we want to live in. This is absolutely not the expectation that we have for our police officers. And I'll say that it's also translated into an enormous amount of energy and rage. That energy and rage, frankly, didn't start with George Floyd. It's a reflection of so many videos of so many unarmed African-American men, of so many people who've turned into a hashtag, and frankly, of so many experiences where we've seen no one held accountable for their deaths. And so we're in a space right now where I completely understand where the rage and where the frustration and where the anger is coming from. However, it's being expressed, it's manifesting in a way that is completely destructive, that's completely unacceptable, and we will absolutely not accept that. I'm making a distinction between those who want to peacefully protest, those who want to exercise their First Amendment right to say that Mr. Floyd should be alive. I agree with that. Who want to exercise their First Amendment right to say those officers should be in jail. I agree with that too. I'm making a distinction between those folks and a group of folks who seem to have come out to St. Paul yesterday for the purpose of smashing a window, for the purpose of destroying something, for the purpose of starting a fire. We do not accept that and will not accept that. I cannot tell you, I just don't have the words to describe the extent to which our St. Paul police officers and firefighters just proved last night that there's just no quit in them at all. They performed heroic service for us, putting out fires, solving problems, literally while having rocks and bottles thrown at them. Our fire department literally went from, it became kind of a game of whack-a-mole with our fire department and our police department kind of moving from one scene to the next, from one site to the next, pushing to try to maintain some sense of, obviously we weren't able to prevent everything from happening, but we wanted to make sure that we demonstrated to all of our residents, to all of you, and certainly to all of the demonstrators out last night. And you know what, I'm not even gonna call them demonstrators because the spirit out there wasn't for George Floyd. It wasn't for better police community relations. It was just a destructive spirit. And part of what I've been sharing on media is just my sense of disgust that somehow you would use his name as cover or an excuse to try to destroy the places our senior citizens have to go in a pandemic to get their medicine, the places our families have to go in a food shortage to get their groceries, the places our residents go in an economic crisis to earn a living is just disgusting. So I'm not gonna give them the respect of calling them demonstrators, but those rioters and those looters out there we absolutely expect to. So all that to say is our police department did I think heroic work of both protecting the rights of those who wanted to peacefully protest while protecting a basic life, health, and safety mission as much as is possible in our city. We sustained damage to nearly 200 businesses, 200 of our businesses who are already struggling, who are already suffering, who are already, many of whom shut down because of the COVID pandemic, who are already fighting for their lives. And for that, I'm devastated. I know you're devastated. We're all kind of in that sense of frustration together. We will figure out how to rebuild together. We will be stronger because of this moment, because we're going to have to just come through this, especially the confluence of the pandemic crisis, the economic crisis, and this crisis that's evolved over the last 48 hours. We're going to have to come through it together. We're going to have to figure out how to pull it through together. I want you to know that I'm going to be your teammate. I'm going to be your cheerleader. I'm going to be your advocate. I'm going to be your ambassador in City Hall as we kind of do that work together. One of the things I'll share is one of the reasons that you did not see mass arrests in St. Paul last night was because, frankly, due to the number of people and the fluid nature of the situation, Chief Axtell had to make a difficult strategic decision as far as allocating resources are concerned, as far as allocating manpower is concerned, between using officers to make arrests and using officers and preserving those same officers to protect our firefighters and to just try to keep the scene as calmed down as much as possible. He made what I think is the absolute right decision to protect our firefighters, to try to prevent just out of control fires from catching in the Midway area. Today, I assume you all saw my press conference yesterday. We made a request for the National Guard for support to help us be able to secure our city and to restore calm. So today, as those support continue to get increasingly on the ground, my hope and expectation is that will give us the support and the manpower that we need to be making arrests and making sure that folks are accountable. Ultimately, I believe, as many have said, that those officers need to be, that charges need to be pressed, that those officers need to be arrested and held accountable for their actions. I'm hopeful that that will happen soon. And that's something I think that's going to be also critical towards helping to tamp down some of the anger in our city, in our state, in our country right now around these events. And I'll share, one of the things that I'm sharing with some of everybody right now is that when we look at that video, what it tells us is, I feel very strongly and passionately that we ought to be in a community where we're all held accountable for our actions. That includes our police officers. That includes those folks who were out in our city yesterday. And that's the route we're going to continue to take as a community. Thank you all for your investment in our city. Thank you all for the big thing that you've done for us in either shutting down or scaling back significantly over these past few months as we've tried to flatten the curve to allow our healthcare professionals to boost testing and treatment capacity for COVID-19 in our community. We have flattened the curve. We've succeeded in ways other states just have not, which is great because it has given us a chance to enhance that capacity. It's also a challenge because as we ease the stay-at-home order, as we move into the stay safe Minnesota phase, as the governor describes it, we're doing so in the context of a time in which we have likely not yet experienced our peak caseload in Minnesota. So that's something we want to keep our eyes on. That said, I also want to call your attention to 2 executive orders that we released this week that have just been overshadowed by current events in the press, but one on masks requiring, and this is a part of our reopening. My goal is to partner with you to figure out creatively every way we can come up with to support you reopening in some form or fashion in a safe way that meets our public health requirements. So one of those things is requiring masks in all city buildings, on city controlled properties, indoors, and also on business licenses, permitted or licensed by the city. Those are the spaces that we feel like we have jurisdiction to inflict that order, to impose that order. But the recommendation is that we all require masks, that we all use masks when we're indoors, particularly when social distancing cannot be practiced around folks who are outside of our household. The second order is around bars and restaurants, to allow them to operate on their own property. If they have outdoor property, they can set up tables to operate on a sidewalk, to operate on, in a parking lane, to operate in a parking lot, to suspend parking requirements temporarily, to allow and facilitate as much of that as possible. I have directed our departments of Public Works and our Department of Safety and Inspections, who are the two departments who will oversee that process, to facilitate that process as swiftly as possible, as simply as possible, and with as little administrative red tape as possible. So there are in some areas, for example, where it's not an application process. One, all fees regarding all this are waived. Two, we wanted to make sure that in any area we can, it's not an application process, but more of like a self-certification process, in such a way that if you've got the proper insurance, you can show us the proper insurance coverage, and show us your seating chart and go ahead and move. You don't have to wait for like the call back and the okay from the city. So that's something that's important to us. And I want to thank both the Chamber of Commerce and the Downtown Alliance and all the other partners who helped, and all the restaurateurs downtown and across our city who I've been in communication with over the past couple of weeks to help us get that right. I said a mouthful, and I know we're going to run out of time. I know you're all busy, so I'm happy to take any questions.
If I may, sir, thank you for your time. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. So question number one has to do, we'd like a few more words to the specific accountability required of the riders. There's that sense of no good was served by folks coming into this market as thugs and looters. And can you speak to that with a little bit more specificity for us? There's that sense of, the police were defending the firefighters. There weren't a lot of arrests. So a little bit more detail around what your plan is moving forward there.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of arrests. Fortunately, we have a significant amount of video coverage in that Midway area. We have a very significant amount of video coverage. I spent the day in our emergency operations center yesterday, and we've got a whole lot on video that we're going to be combing through to make sure that we're holding people accountable as we move forward. Like I said, the number of arrests that we made yesterday was mitigated by our need to focus on the mission of protecting our firefighters as they put out fires in our community. And that was a mission that our police department carried out very, very well, as our firefighters provided that heroic service for us. We will be reviewing those videotapes. Chief Axtell, I think, made a profound and powerful statement yesterday that said, you may think you're getting away with something, but you're not. We are, they were using marking rounds yesterday to mark folks and be able to kind of come back and arrest them later. We're going to be reviewing those videotapes. And like I said, moving forward, as we do have the capacity and the manpower in the area to be able to do all of those missions at once, you'll see us being a little more assertive with regard to making those arrests.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And question number two has to do with specific steps being taken to protect the city and de-escalate for tonight.
Yeah. And I'll say, one, Chief Axtell always says, he always talks about our bank of trust. And I always hear him say a couple things. One, that by the time you need to make a withdrawal, you better make sure you've spent the last couple of years making some significant deposits. Fortunately, we have in our community. Our community knows I ran for office as somebody who knows what it feels like to get pulled over for driving while black. We've made significant investments through our police department in our community first public safety strategy, which has included engaging some of the type of community-based interveners, the type of community-based kind of organizers and activists who are being very, very helpful. We spent the day yesterday on the phone with a lot of them who are on the ground, who are helping us understand the ground truth. Frankly, I grew up with most of the Black Lives Matter and Justice for Philando types in St. Paul and in the Twin Cities metro area. And one of the things that I heard loud and clear from all of them was that as they looked around the folks who were inciting, not the protesters, but those looters, the folks who were like inciting, they would say, we don't know these folks. These aren't like the folks who have been really in this movement with us. And so that's something that we're keeping our eyes on as well as we move forward. But partnering with our National Guard, we're getting significant support from the state troopers, from the Metro Transit Police, from the University of Minnesota Police, and also from departments around the Metro. The Chief Axtell spent a significant amount of time with Metro area chiefs requesting the mutual aid yesterday. So we've got, we had yesterday some significant support from other agencies, and we'll have even more today with the mobilization of the National Guard.
Thank you. Another question about curfew. I know the governor is planning on, I didn't get to hear all of his press conference, but I know he was intending to issue a metro-wide curfew for 8 p.m. tonight. What is your approach in St. Paul?
The governor has not made any announcement with regard to issuing a curfew or not. That is absolutely for me something that is under consideration. Literally all options are on the table, I think. And I think as the day unfolds, we'll be you know, as the day unfolds and we understand what the ground truth is today. Like I said, it has evolved incredibly rapidly, and the situation on the ground has been fluid, literally from 1 hour to the next. And so I think we want to take some time today and see how this early afternoon, how the morning unfolds in our community. And either way, you'll be hearing from me again publicly this afternoon as we determine what steps we think are necessary this afternoon. A citywide curfew is absolutely one of the possibilities on the table, but more to come when we get something nailed to the floor on that.
All right, so we'll stand by on that. You are getting questions from allies. What can we do as individuals to protect the cities from another evening like this? Others who are asking as executives about what can we do as business executives? What are the top things we can do to combat racism more broadly? So specifically for this weekend, what can we do? And more broadly, longer term, what can we do?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think we have to act on essentially two planes. One is addressing how people protest, and that's pretty much everything that we've discussed on this call through our law enforcement partners, working with our community partners, and making sure that we're not accepting activities or behaviors that threaten basic life, health, and safety in our community. I also think that until you know, Martin Luther King once said, protest is the language of the unheard. And so until we, you know, also powerfully address the why people are protesting, we'll continue to find ourselves in these vicious cycles. And the truth is, if there's something that really unsettles me right now, you know, we have young people, and I said we have two groups. The truth is we have three groups. We have the folks who are just heartbroken over the loss of George Floyd and are committed to doing like anything they can to prevent this from ever happening again. I think we have people who are using his name as cover or as an excuse to break the law and to engage in activities that are just unacceptable in our city or any other cities. But I think the largest group, frankly, is the middle group who says, oh yeah, you're right, Mayor. We can't have this happen anymore. We have to stop this. But also, how do we stop this? We've seen all these videos over and over again. We've seen all these trials play out. Unfortunately, we've said way too many times. We've asked the rhetorical question, how bad does it have to be? How blatant does it have to be? How egregious does it have to be? How well documented does it have to be for someone to finally be held accountable, for somebody to go to jail because George Floyd is not still alive right now? We said that after Trayvon Martin. We said that after Philando Castile was killed. We said that after Eric Garner was killed in a way that is an echo, that George Floyd is an echo of, having said as he was dying to an officer who was choking him to death, I can't breathe, and having literally pled for his life. And so I think the two are together. We have to be willing to address the why people are protesting. And I've said this to some of you before, and I'll say it again. At some point, the fact that I'm speaking up on these things as a young African-American man is not really surprising. It's not new. It's not groundbreaking. It's not revolutionary change in the way that the folks who are so angry they're out in the streets need. I'll tell you, when we have our CEOs, our business leaders, our business owners saying, and for me, someone reached out and essentially said, this must be a hard week for the African-American community after having seen that video. And my response was, this is a hard week for anybody who looks at that video and says, oh my God, we can't be in a place where the people we hire to protect us do that, act in that way. You don't have to be African-American to feel that. And the truth is, the more people who are not African-American, the more people who are not millennials, the more people who are business leaders and taxpayers and employers and employees in our community are willing to speak up and say, you know what, for our economy, for our humanity, for our way of life, for our sense of justice and purpose, we can't have things like that happening in our community. We cannot have that culture of policing that we know has been a part of our history. We can't bring it into our future. And two, as a part of that, when we see those manifestations of those old cultures, someone has to be held accountable for that. I think that begins to pave the road toward the type of change that we need to get us out of this cycle.
Appreciate that. More than you know. We have questions specifically to the moment at hand, having to do with the Skyway this weekend. Can we shut the Skyway down till 6 a.m. on Monday? Can we, what's the plan for the sense of immediacy downtown? We've got employers, thousands of people who are not willing to come into the city right now. And I get it in the context of the pandemic that offers one more level of challenge for us. But what can you tell us for immediate response for the business community coming into the city, and how can we communicate back to you throughout the course of this weekend? Input, feedback, suggestions?
Yep. It's a good question. I think we already issued guidance for the Skyways. I'll verify that and get that back to you. If I can get that to you through B, if that'd be helpful, I appreciate that. And Joe as well. I'm in contact with B and Joe somewhat regularly. We're kind of constantly texting and moving. So you can either feel free to just send that straight to our office or send it through your business advocates who we work, like I said, pretty closely with. That's pretty important. Like I said, you're right. We do have people who we got calls from relatives out of town last night to see if we needed help getting out of the city, right? And the narrative that's being shared on the news, the narrative that's being shared in the national news is not helpful for us. The reality on University Avenue last night wasn't helpful for our desire to continue to rebuild and resume our economic activity post, in this kind of COVID era. And so, I've told my staff, I've told Joe, I've told B that for me, all options are on the table. I want you to see the extent to which the city is with you in this, and the extent to which we are going to be willing to do some really unusual things. Like I said, that what I call that self-certification type of process that I described earlier is something I don't think the city's ever done before, but this is a moment where we can demonstrate, one, a level of trust and confidence in you as we work together to reopen, and two, the extent to which, I say all the time, I believe that government should always prioritize your needs, the ability of people to navigate successfully the process that we create over the ease of administering those processes. And this is an example of that. So we'll continue to push on that. I'll get to you whatever our guidance. I think we did allow the Skyways to close already. There's a million moving pieces, so I want to make sure that I verify that before I give it to you as a final answer. Hey, B.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I was muted. I know you have to be out by briefly, so you have to go. One more input for you from a couple of different Q&As having to do with, as you consider the how and if and when of a curfew, the sooner the better, please, for the sake of managing employees. And folks are looking for a structured way to channel their anger, outrage, and they don't know where to go and what to do. So let's agree, and we'll commit to communicating back to the community how we can provide a vehicle, a method, a channel for communicating and kind of processing this together, if that's okay with you.
It is, and I'll tell you, my instinct would always be to bring people together. We played out a couple of scenarios in which we bring people together and create like a zone, a protest zone, or a something. We haven't figured out how to do that and social distance, or do that and have everybody in masks. And so, the compound nature of this crisis is really hurting us with our ability to respond and know kind of even how to do that. We're still trying to figure that out. And so more to come on that, but I absolutely think that people need some way to sort of exercise their energy right now. Can I speak to Dan's question? I saw Dan say I didn't answer something. He said something was a non-answer. Let's see. Dan wanted to know, Dan Rosedahl, I'd like to hear specifically the steps the mayor and police are taking to protect the city and make sure things are just de-escalated. If the police need more resources, is the city going to add that for tonight? Yes, that's what I was trying to say. We've called in everybody. No days off, anything like that. Our officers are working 10-hour shifts, working around the clock. They're doing incredible. We've gotten the support of, like I said, some of our other Twin Cities law enforcement agencies to help us in this moment. Significant support from the state troopers, from the Metro Transit Police and the University of Minnesota Police. And we've got the mobilization now of the Minnesota National Guard. And so that will be a significant support for us to have the type of capacity that we need to be able to cover all of the different missions that we want to make sure that we're covering at the same time. The question about de-escalation, there's just frankly no one answer about that because so many of these things are so fluid. I'm doing a call like this actually next. I got to get off because we're doing a call with leaders in our communities of color. Many of those kind of community leaders, pastors, elders, folks like that are just as disgusted by this as we are. And they're standing forward to ask us how they can get out in the streets and help kind of tamp things down with folks. Having the increased presence, I think, will help with the escalation as well. And, I'll say, I've said it many times, I'll say again, just having the level of relationships that our police officers, that our police department, that specifically our chief has cultivated with our community members, it gives us a whole lot of capital to work with community members.
Thank you, sir, so much. The most recent news is that the governor will make a decision within his capacity around curfew by about 2 p.m. today. So you had over 225 participants here who took a moment to hear from you. Thank you, sir, for the time. Thank you for your leadership and leading in as you are. We look forward to continued conversations and appreciate this open dialogue.
Yes,
very helpful.
I appreciate it. And we'll be in the room with the governor. We've been on the phone already this morning talking about it. So
okay.
That's correct. You'll hear from us by probably around 2 o'clock.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. And thanks to everyone who took the time this morning.
Thank you all. I appreciate your investment in the city. We're invested in you too.